It's not that entrepreneurship is awesome and rewarding. Oh, by the way, the downside of it is that it's challenging and it's tough and it's mentally draining and it pushes you. I think those are the bonuses. I think if you're not pushing yourself and challenging yourself in your life, then you're not really living, you're just existing.
Hello, and welcome to Season 3 of The Founder Mindset, brought to you by ATB. I'm your host, Leah Sarich, and I'm delighted to be back for another season of talking to founders about what it's really like to build a company from that first big idea. If you've listened to previous episodes, you know I was a journalist for over 20 years, so I'm more curious about why anyone would ever want to become an entrepreneur. Not so much about the business model, product market fit, and so on. I want to understand why entrepreneurs keep going, why they think they're the ones to solve a massive problem, why they want to make a real impact in the world. And if you're here, I bet you want to know why too. Let's find out. Joining me today in studio is Hanif Joshaghani, co-founder and CEO of Symend, a FinTech company that uses behavioral science and AI to help large companies like telecommunications and utility giants personalize their customer engagements, guiding them toward paying their overdue bills and more positive financial outcomes. Hanif.
It's a good description.
Did you like that?
Yeah,
I wrote that myself.
That was a really good description.
It's so nice to have you here in
Thanks.
studio. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, no problem.
We really appreciate it. I know you and I have talked about this in the past. It was a few years ago now, but I would love for you to share your journey into actually becoming an entrepreneur. I understand this goes way back for you.
It does. I don't know. It goes back to this thing where like I perform the best when I'm most closely aligned to outcomes, which an entrepreneur ultimately is, more than shareholders, more than executives. It's like you have this one-to-one relationship between the work that you do and the outcomes that you gain. And that kind of goes all the way back to, I think, my first entrepreneurial endeavor. I was in high school in New York, in Long Island, and I would take the train to Manhattan and I would buy fireworks and fake bags and glasses, and I would carry them because I was on a scholarship and I didn't have money, and I was in a very wealthy environment where I was like one of the few people that didn't have money, and I wanted to keep up with my friends. So I would then make the trek to New York into Chinatown and then come back and sell it to all the, well-to-do middle-class kids and rich kids in Long Island. And then that would like finance my ability to kind of go and hang out with my friends without having my hand out.
I love this.
That was my first hustle. There was a bunch of other ones. I built an online bookstore to compete with Barnes and Nobles when I was in college, where we would buy used books as people graduated, and then we would inventory them in warehouses and set up a SKU and barcode-based online catalog.
Come on.
Did it without a license from the school, and we were selling syllabuses and notes and stuff like that. And Barnes and Nobles got really pissed, and they told the administration at University of Chicago, and they put a cease and desist on our business after 2 quarters.
That's going to be a bit of a badge of honor, though.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. My favorite one was, and I think that's the thing that actually probably really poked the bear, was we had this one ad that we were posting all over the dormitories, which was like, who is Barnes and who is Nobles anyway? And why haven't you met them? Sounds shady to me. You know us. Come buy books from us. It was.
I love it.
It was crazy.
That is amazing.
We made money for 2 quarters, and then it's just like 2 semesters, and then they shut it down.
They shut it down.
Yeah,
I love it. Did I also hear something about how you helped your dad sell cars?
Yeah. My dad was a mechanic, and in the summers and my off seasons where I wasn't at school, I would always go back home. He eventually started a dealership, but before he started a dealership, he would literally just go as a side hustle on top of his kind of not minimum wage job, but close to it. He would go and find cars that he could fix up and then sell them, right? Through the newspapers, putting in front of the house, whatever. And then I would work with him on the cars. We had like classic cars like Corvettes and Jaguar Mark 8s, and we had everything to like Mercedes. And then what we figured out by accident, and it was is that I'm actually really good at selling. And the way that happened was we had this one, he really branched out. And so one of the cars that he was trying to sell in front of the house was an old Mercedes E-Class. And he had to run to the bathroom. And we were renting a room on top of someone else's house. So we didn't have much. And so he ran to the bathroom. He hadn't been able to offload the car. And this is a world where he would park all of his savings into one car, try to flip it, then park it all to the next. It was a very high risk turnover kind of endeavor to kind of like build a bit of a nest egg until he had enough to buy a dealership. And he hadn't been able to move this car. It was the most expensive car he'd bought yet because it was all Nissan Sentras and Accords. And all of a sudden we're getting into this Mercedes E-Class, and he had to run to the bathroom. He had to run to the bathroom, and he's like, just talk to these people. And they were like, I think Ukrainian or Polish immigrants. I remember this. And before he come back out of the bathroom,
Yeah.
I'd sold the car.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. And my mom and I wasn't even trying to sell it at first. I was just talking to them about like, this is one of all the cars that my dad has done. This is the one that I love sitting in because it just makes you feel special. And I started to talk about the experience of it. And then the guy sat down, and then he's looking at his wife, and he's like, you know what? I'd just buy it. I was like, I mean, if I was in your shoes, I'm not in your shoes. I wish I was, but if I was in your shoes, I'd definitely do it. And so he did it. And then my dad comes out, and the guy is like, yeah, your son convinced me. I'm going to buy the car. And then the deal was struck. They signed the paperwork. They went to the DMV, transferred the titles, comes home. And my dad was not a sentimental man. So there was no congrats or thank you or nothing. But the thing that was clear to my mom, who was observing this in the house from the window, my dad comes back into the house, and my mom is like, you should let Henny sell the cars from now on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was another big one for me, actually, now that I think about it. It was wild. I mean, there was a point at which, and this actually explains a lot. There was a point at which, like, me and my dad would have this habit of like, we couldn't walk into a restaurant even without looking at the number of people entering and exiting, what everybody's ordering, and being like, could we make money here? Like, it was just our lens into the world was a P&L lens.
Wow.
It's just that's the way. It always is like a version of the Matrix where everything you see is code. In our world, everything we saw was business. It's like, in the lens of business, how does this make sense? And that just became the way I was taught to think.
Yeah.
I guess.
It's in your blood.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, my dad, we came here with nothing. We lost everything because of the war and revolutions and camps, and he didn't have a degree to rely on. And within a couple of years, he'd gone from like heavy duty mechanic to saving enough money to his first car we flipped was an old 80s Nissan Sentra, to he had his own dealership. And he just relentlessly, there was no clock on, clock off. Hustle became a way of living from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. And of all the things that my dad taught me, I think that's the thing that I carry with me the most. And I'm still like that. There's no end game. There's no downtime. There's no balance. It's just, it's almost like you're wired and you've been groomed to think about life as hustle.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of how I've developed into the person I am today. So I think in some way I was always going to be an entrepreneur in some way. I don't think there was any other future for me, honestly.
Wow. That's a great story. So it was in your blood to think in a certain way, and that clearly led you to entrepreneurship. I mean, when you start seeing the world that way, I can understand how that makes you do exactly what you're going to do as an entrepreneur. But I think if I've got this correct, you told me once that you actually went into investment banking first.
Yeah, I had scholarships through university and grad school, and coming out of there, I had a strong view that I need credibility and experience.
Right.
And that I'm not ready. And the thing that high school and university really taught me, because it got me out of kind of like, my bubble of like, poor income, those immigrant communities and stuff like that, was what the world, because my definition of entrepreneurship was the guy that owned the car wash back in the day.
Right.
And then you go to high school and you go to college and you're hanging out with people where their lens into the art of the possible and what the world is, what entrepreneurship could be, is on an order of magnitude different. And I just needed to learn more. And I became very convinced of that. And so I went to university. I worked in a bunch of hedge funds in Chicago. I did an MBA. I worked in mergers and acquisitions. I worked in corporate finance. I put in enough time to determine what my core competencies from an academic perspective are. and to really narrow the scope of where I want to spend my time. And that kind of the next logical step after that was entrepreneurship. I think another really important thing that I learned about myself working in big companies is that companies that are primarily driven by where success is equally or greater tuned towards political navigation of the org versus just raw execution, I fail in those companies.
Oh,
Yeah, I like to think analytically, I was a great banker, but I was, and most of my friends who I'm still good friends with from investment banking will back me up on this. I was a terrible investment banker in terms of the kind of investment banker that the bosses would want to promote in
right.
advance. Even though from a subject matter perspective, I knew what I was doing. So um, I didn't really ever fit into this kind of big company. I wanted to just execute. And so, yeah, once I'd done enough, I left and started my first company. I think that was around, I say, '09.
Yeah,
And the rest is history.
there you go. All right, well, that takes us to Symend. So tell me about where you came up with the idea for Symend.
It was a convergence of two things. One is like these memories that I carried forward from when I was a kid, kind of intersecting with an experience that I'd had after one of my exits out of a company that I'd helped start, where I was kind of just attending conferences, reading and learning and trying to plan my next move. I was at a conference and we're talking about like the kinds of things. And one of the conference planners was a good friend of mine. We're having dinner and we're just reminiscing about we had two different conversations. One was about what I should do next, and I need to be inspired. I needed to no longer be just opportunistic, but something that like really deeply resonates with some sort of North Star that I can really passionately get behind. And then separately, we had a separate conversation later in the dinner where we were like reminiscing about the old days and poverty and all the terrible things that we had to survive to get to where we were and how that made us stronger, tougher individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And the intersection of those was this thing around delinquency and this idea that, and I'd studied behavioral economics, University of Chicago, and so I had understood the idea of triggers and motivators and imperfect decision making away from the utility curve as people get cognitively fatigued. And so there was all these concepts that I was academically aware of, and I'd been able to, and then they resonated academically because I was able to map them to the way things had happened in my childhood when we were poor and we got bills and people would harass us. And instead of nudging you towards solving the problem, it actually forced you to like put your head in the sand. It's called like the ostrich effect, where people put
Right.
their head in the sand, they freeze up and they start to make bad decisions, right? Even today, like if I'm cognitively impaired and I've had a long, really difficult day, the likelihood that I'm going to be able to face head on a really difficult problem, a challenging problem, is very, very bad.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the inverse of that is why people say the 5 a.m. club, you should tackle the hardest things first. And so I knew about these things and I was able to map it to this problem of like, I was reminiscing about the old days and how bad delinquency had impacted our lives to the point where even today, I have this negative visceral reaction to bills
Really?
because of the bad experiences of bill
Yeah.
collectors in my childhood. And so I kind of just came up with this idea and I was bouncing it around with my friend over dinner. I couldn't sleep. Like I all nighters and planning and then consumer research reports. And it just the more that I dug into it, the more I became clear on a thesis that behavioral science, which is the science of understanding people cognitively and then being able to translate that into product design, communication design, these types of things that help influence behavior and nudge them towards doing a certain thing. That has existed as an academic discipline since the 80s. It's been introduced into consulting practices in places like healthcare and finance, but it's never been productized for communication at scale. And if you could do that, then you can nudge people towards having the empowerment and the self-agency to solve their problems without hitting them over the head and giving them these really terrible experiences that can carry with them for decades. And so that became the thesis. And surprisingly, solving it technically turned out to be really, really hard. And we've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but we're also done a lot of amazing things and we're building a great company. But what I will say is the North Star of productizing behavioral science so it could be deployed in a very personalized and effective way to inform the way customers behave about their bills, that central tenet has remained pretty consistent since the
Yeah.
starting days.
You know what I'm hearing from you is this notion of like that real personal mission, this understanding that this really blows when people have to deal with this stuff and I know how to fix it and I'm going to take this deeply and personally until it's done right.
Yeah. Yeah,
I love it.
I mean, and then we're on a good track. Um we've collected, we've helped customers pay off over 50 billion of past due bills on our solution now, USD, so I guess 75 Canadian.
Yeah.
We've helped customers resolve over 250 million past due delinquency episodes on the solution. At this point, we work with some of the largest brands in the world. It hasn't been a straight road. It's been one where I've made and the company's made some mistakes along the way, and we've had to learn and harden it. But what we've also figured out is that what we're trying to solve is really, really challenging and difficult.
Mhm.
And we are now, because we persisted at it with focus for so long, um, we've gotten quite good at it at this point. And
Yeah.
it's really proud to see where the company is.
I think you're underselling it just a little bit there. Some of those numbers are pretty amazing, but let's talk about how many employees do you have these days?
At our peak, we were like 300 people.
Yeah.
Today, we're less than 100.
Okay.
Just shy of 100.
Yeah. And how much money have you raised?
About 150 million.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned this, but like huge clients, global clients.
Yeah. Multinational banks, telcos with over 100 million customers. We're launching now new products into the market. One of the new products is an insurance product, so that if you lose your job or you fall ill and you can't keep up with your bills, even if you're a gig worker, you can make a claim. And then the insurance company will actually pay your bills, so keep you in good standing until you get back on your feet. So
Wow.
it's called Symend Prevent. It's actually really, again, it's just like we built this platform to nudge people, but the North Star was to help this kind of vulnerable population. And we're like, okay, what else can we do?
Yeah.
And so it was a natural extension of our trying to increase the surface area of solutions we can bring to bear to help solve the North Star problem that we were going after in the first place. The reception in the market's been really good so far.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
I love this for you guys and for the customers, obviously. But as we know, when you're building a company, and you sort of alluded to this a couple of times, there's always one or two or several do or die moments, pivotal moments when you're like, oh man, I don't know if this is going to work. It'd be great if you could just share one of those moments, and then we'll sort of talk through how you moved through it.
I think I made a couple big mistakes, but they all kind of vector into one thing, which is when we raised a lot of money, when we started like first 3 or 4 years, we were shooting lights out. And, triple digit growth every year, and just like, darling of the city and all that. And the big raise that we did was early COVID. We brought in new investors. There was the board was effectively recomposed. And one of the things that we arrived at was we need more experienced senior leadership in key roles that could help scale the org from the 40 odd people that it was at the time to the 200-300 that it needed to be. And the people that we brought in were just not the right. They're great. I have nothing bad to say about them in terms of they're good people. They were very skilled. They're very knowledgeable. But they fell short in a couple of key areas that ultimately hurt us badly and created a pretty big reset for the company as a result. One of them was they weren't scrappy early stage builders. They're big company guys. So they didn't know how to, they'd experienced directing war from the back, but they hadn't experienced trench warfare themselves.
Right.
And maybe they'd done it some time ago, but they were no longer in that place. And the fact that they weren't in that place means that they weren't builders. And when somebody isn't a builder and you put them to a really difficult task and the company isn't fully formed and mature in every way, the default position that I've seen most commonly people fall back into is hire a ton of people, right? You haven't even figured out the patterns yet. You don't know what to scale into. You don't really know what kinds of people you need to hire. But you have this problem and you're on a time crunch and there's the VC pressure and all of these things. And so you end up hiring and bloating out your organization before you really solve the patterns that you can then scale.
Right.
You get the scale before the pattern. That was one of the things. And the other thing was we're solving this very complex thing for a very complex use case in a very complex environment of enterprise customers. And they didn't spend nearly enough time understanding our solution, the problem, our customers, the use case, before they started to really ramp and hire and things like that. So a stupid example, you end up with a bunch of sales guys that are selling to an audience of experts and they're not experts themselves. And that falls flat every time. And so there was a bunch of that happened. And it, unfortunately, now I've learned in hindsight that a key takeaway for me is you have to be very, very judicious about hiring. You have to make sure that you're hiring to the current needs, not the future needs, which means make sure that if you're still in the pattern recognition, early scale time, and you're not in a mature business, hire builders. Don't hire people and validate that they're builders. And if you get it wrong, which, hiring is a coin flip, 64, 1/3 on a good day, have a understanding of what needs to be true for this guy to make it for 90 days, past 90 days, what's got to be true for him to be let go quickly, have a view of that, set expectations clearly, explicitly, quantitatively. And if it's not working out, don't doubt yourself, just fire faster. I think the graveyard of startups is littered with people who didn't fire fast enough. But it's not littered with people that fired too fast and maybe got a fire or two wrong.
Right.
It's far more expensive to give the benefit of the doubt to the wrong person than to maybe once in a while fire someone that could have worked out with time. Right? There's an asymmetric relationship there. And we hesitated. The guys had a lot of experience. We're like, well, what if it's us and not them? We should give it more time. So we hesitated to fire. And then what ends up happening is the more senior you hire, the longer you leave that bad hire in place, the bigger the surface area and the depth of the thing that you need to undo. And then you combine that with long sales cycles and you got to reset the pipeline. What that means is a 1-year mistake is really a 2 to 2.5 year mistake by the time you fix it. And that was the thing that we went through. I mean, we were on the other side of it now. I mean, we flew really close to the sun trying to get on the other side of it.
So we'll talk about what you've learned from that experience in a second. But what I want to get a little bit more curious about is how it actually felt for you as the founder of the company, as the co-founder of the company. How did it feel to you to all of a sudden go, oh no?
I cried. It was gut-wrenching. It really dawned on me that there's a huge problem here when we had a sales kickoff meeting. There's like 40, 50 people in the sales kickoff. And it just, they flew everybody into Calgary. It was like a hugely expensive thing. And I was sitting there and everybody's like rah, rah. And all I could see was this incredibly expensive org and the quota attainment against, there was just such a big mismatch. And I walked out of that meeting. It was like the first stand up of the SKO. I called my CFO, Ali, and I was like, what the fuck have we done? I had a visceral reaction to seeing all those people in the room. It was that day immediately that me and him huddled and said, we have to fix this fast. And we set the plans in motion to undo it all. It was a visceral reaction. I could feel it. And then I started to execute and fix it. And I was able to peel the onion back and figure out that there was so much building and figuring out that still needed to be done. I pot committed. My penance was to go and be the head of sales on myself. Pretty much 80, 90% of everybody that was hired over that surge, we had to let go. And I had to kind of get back into the front lines, sell it myself, understand what works, pattern it out, make it consistent. I didn't hire another guy to lead sales until I had been able to confirm that that's founder-led sales motion. I could train at least a couple guys to do it. Right? So I could validate that could be done by others. And then once we start to see the pattern of more than just me was generating pipeline, only then were we like, okay, I think we're ready to exit founder-led sales again. And that process from that SKO to the time that I hired a VP sales was almost 3 years.
Wow. So you learned a lot from that moment.
And it was penance. Like I was on the road. Like the last 3 years, I mean, the new guy has been great. He's only been there for 90 days. But for the 2.5 years that I basically went in, this was my fuck up. It's my job to our shareholders or our employees, to our customers to fix it. And I stayed on the road for probably 200 days a year for 2 or 3 years straight.
Wow.
Because again, the problem is rebuilding a sales pipeline can happen at the speed of the buying process by the clients.
Right.
And if you're selling large ticket 7-figure deals to people that are doing annual planning, the laws of physics of the market you're selling in will determine how fast you can rebuild that pipe.
Right.
So it took me a full 2 years to get back to the point where we had really good momentum with large logos.
Wow. The Founder Mindset is brought to you by ATB Financial. In the fast-paced world of tech, your banking needs evolve as quickly as your industry. Whether you're just starting out or aiming to reach new heights, ATB Financial is dedicated to supporting tech companies every step of the way. Partner with ATB Financial for a banking solution that grows with your business. What have you taken away from that experience?
I think you need to have a very, very analytical and thoughtfully designed idea of what are the signals that clearly indicate that I'm ready to exit founder-led sales and hire a CRO and hire large sales teams, because I've checked these boxes of there's a pattern, and I've been able to script it out, and I can train at least 2 other guys to be 80% as good as me. And yeah, there's these key elements that you need to validate.
Yeah.
And if you're not there yet, then stay in founder-led sales mode until you have it. Yeah. That was a really big lesson. And the other one was like, there was this thing, I don't know if you remember, like Bezos used to do, where he would write these articles that painted a picture of the future of a thing. And I now start to do that. It's like, before I get into anything, whether it's hiring or a new product or whatever, I write out what are the things that need to be true in 90 days or whatever, where I validated for myself that I should double down and keep going. And conversely, what are the things that need to be true where I've made a mistake and I need to fail? Because it's okay to it's nice, it's all well and good to say there's a difference between one-way doors and two-way doors, but that becomes a moot point if you're not decisive about walking back through the two-way door.
Right.
And so I think that people make this mistake of, like, the first thing you need to decide is this a one-way door or a two-way door? And what does that mean about the analytical framework and the level of delegation and all of these things in making that decision? But the other side of it is, if it's a two-way door, what are the conditions that need to be met for me to walk it back? And you need to be very, very kind of disciplined around that. So we weren't disciplined around that. We are disciplined about that today.
You are now. Yeah.
It's okay to fail at things. I think it's just like,
I don't like that word fail, as I don't think that makes any sense in the entrepreneurial landscape. For me, it's just an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, but it's like you just being decisive about shit. We're in the process right now of shutting down some key markets and doubling down into others. And the less mature, less experienced Hanif of like 3 years ago would have been like, well, that's a setback. Versus that's just the iterative process of being an entrepreneur. Yeah. And you got to try things. Famously, again, I go back to Bezos. He's one of the guys that I really try to study. You know, for every one Amazon cloud, how many Kindles and like things that have just completely failed have there been? Phones and this and that. You just got to learn to like have a strong framework for how you decide to do things. Don't linger on just saying the yes, but be very decisive about when something isn't panning out and let it go, and don't get emotional about it. Yeah.
And I would say, listening to your story, trust your instinct.
Trust.
Because you knew it. You felt it in your gut.
Yeah. Me and my CFO, both, we were like, within a month of hiring this guy, we were sitting around and we're like, oh, does something feel off to you? And we're like, yeah. And we go to the board and we have these conversations, and it'd be like, oh no, I think we should give it more time. And then we give it more time. And then a month later, me and Ali just sitting there having a drink together again. Like, this just doesn't, we doubted ourselves, honestly.
Yeah.
We did. We took in a lot of money. We'd never scaled something on this scale, on this order of magnitude. And that self-doubt really hurt us.
Yeah.
There's two places where you can really, really make bad decisions. One is when you doubt yourself, and the other one is where the need to make something happen clouds your lens and your objectivity. You need something to be true. So you almost data mine the facts towards making the decision in almost like a predetermined way instead of just being very objective about decision making.
Right.
I think those are the two things where you can get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. But look how much you've learned, hey?
Yeah.
And now here goes the company. I love it. You talked a little bit about this and alluded to it about how much travel you did over the last couple of years. But I am really curious about how being an entrepreneur affects your life outside of work. Because as we know, being an entrepreneur is not a 9-to-5 gig. So what does that look like for you?
It ebbs and flows. I can tell you when I'm at my best, and I can also acknowledge that I'm not always at my best.
Nobody is.
The thing that I really start to really realize, and I do commit myself to it, but I've fallen off the wagon once or twice, is a deep commitment to, I don't really believe in work-life balance.
Yeah.
I'm not, that's not me. And I don't burn out because I'm doing what I love. You know, I get fatigued physically and I need to rest, but that's not the same as burnout.
Right.
And the only time that I get stressed, like there's the guy who used to coach Michael Jordan, there's a famous video where he's like, stress comes only about situations that you haven't faced. And the minute you face them and start to have a plan and start to execute against the challenge, then that's just a situation. That's not stress anymore.
Right.
So stress comes from the inability, either because you can't or you won't, looking at a situation or a problem and just tackling it.
Yeah.
That's what causes stress. So the thing where we were like moving in the wrong direction and I wasn't dealing with it caused a lot of stress. The minute me and Ali were like, we know we have a plan, and we sat down and we had clarity of thought about the direction that we want to go, the stress went away. It was still intense.
Yeah.
And it was high octane and all of those kinds of things, but it wasn't stressful per se.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that fatigues me truly is, one is obviously the lack of sleep, and the other one is stress. And so what I've learned is, as long as I deal with my problems head on,
you're good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
So that's one. The other one is frankly physical fitness. The brain is just a muscle, and it's connected to all the other muscles in your body, and you need the energy and the mental clarity to execute. I've fallen off the wagon where I've eaten crappy for a stretch, and that's definitely a thing that I need to do better. I 9 out of 10 times I'm pretty good about it, but I don't think I've missed a day in the gym in 10 years.
Really?
Not one.
Wow.
Even if it's a shitty workout, I go in there and I do 3 sets and a couple burpees and walk out. Or go for a 10-kilometer power walk or whatever. If I go 2 days in a row without the gym, I start to see it in my mental health, honestly. And I will say for sure, and I can say this about myself, when I'm in really good shape, I do better at work than when I'm not. And so that's the other thing that I think is really important to make time for. And the final bit of it is, the family life side, you have two choices. There's two vectors of things. One is finding a way to make time for your family. And every person's conditions on how much time they can make and what those demands are is different. And they have to find a different line between that and their job. So I'm not going to sit here and say what I've figured out is a good rule for others, because I think it's very personal.
Right.
I happen to be in a position where I have an incredibly I married well. I married really, really well. And I married, most importantly, when I see myself compared to other entrepreneurs where this works or it doesn't, I married in between company 3 and company 4. So I'd already had a decade of entrepreneurship almost under my belt. And I knew exactly what this life was about. And I was very explicit with my now wife at the time. Even after our first or second date, I was like, I just need to draw this out for you.
You need to understand what you're getting into.
What you're getting into, because
Yeah.
I can see myself catching feelings here and this getting serious. And before we go too far, you need to, because there are things, this is who I am. There's no changing it. And so I was very honest with her about it. And so she knew exactly what she was buying and walking into. And the bargain was struck early, where I've seen people struggle. Like, not everyone, some people can adapt, but I've seen a higher proportion of people where they struggle to make the work-life thing work, where their lifestyle when they started their family was one thing, and somewhere along the way they got the entrepreneurship bug mid-flight to their family life,
Right.
and then they flipped it. That is a lot harder to manage.
Sure.
Obviously.
Sure.
It can be done.
Sure.
But I think that's a harder thing to do, to navigate, than what I have to navigate, because I was fortunate enough to both find the right spouse, and a big part of that was because she chose this life as much as I did. And so she's been amazing at it, and an amazing partner. And I can also confidently say that a big part of what makes me keep going and taking on the world and everything else is her. We make a really, really good pair, and she gives me strength. And so I actually don't think I'd be nearly as successful without her. So I don't think it's a trade-off. I think it's an enhancement, honestly.
That's really nice to hear.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the challenges of being an entrepreneur. I also want to take a moment to reflect on what you love about being an entrepreneur.
Winning deals.
Winning deals.
Oh my God. Like, I remember we had a really, really great meeting with a massive auto lender in Texas. And walking out of there, I don't remember the walk from the building to the car. It felt like I was floating. It's the greatest high. Closing deals, winning. There's the butterfly. I even to this day, the prep, the root Q&A, what if they say this, what if they say that, let's dossier every individual. The prep work that goes into what we do to win deals is incredible. And I love that part of wargaming it out. And I love winning. And honestly, like, as much as I hate losing, I think the ecstasy I feel and I experience from winning is because of how it's positioned against the losses, right? If all you've ever had is like allegory of the cave, like if all you've ever felt is winning, you don't know what to compare it to. If all you've ever had is wealth,
right,
then I think that people who've been poor enjoy wealth much more than people that have been born and raised into it, right? I think people who have only experienced darkness enjoy the light a lot more than people who've only ever seen sunshine. So I think very similarly, loss creates that positioning and that point of reference for the wins. And so I lean into the pain and I lean into the losses because I know that there's always a win on the other side of it. And I know that it's all part of the journey. It's not that entrepreneurship is awesome and rewarding. Oh, by the way, the downside of it is that it's challenging and it's tough and it's mentally draining and it pushes you. I think those are the bonuses. I think if you're not pushing yourself and challenging yourself in your life, then you're not really living. You're just existing. To live is to challenge yourself and to suffer and to push the boundaries. Anything less than that, you're just floating through life. You're not really living it.
Oh, I love that. And clearly you love it too because you're also an investor and you're a mentor to a lot of other entrepreneurs. Tell me a little bit about what you like about doing that kind of work.
When you find the right entrepreneur, there's a friend of mine, Dan Earhart, he's a great example of it. When you work with the right people and you feel at least partially responsible in a limited way for giving them the guidance and at least some of the tools they bring to bear to kind of win as well, it's a great feeling. It can be very frustrating as well because when you have an entrepreneurial lens, you're a consummate optimist. You have this burning thing going on inside of you and you project that into others and you want everyone, it took me a long time to appreciate that not everybody is wired the way I am. um, because you want to see that in others, right?
Sure.
So it's really frustrating when they let you down and they're
Sure.
not like that.
Right. Right.
It causes incredible amount of frustration for me. The only expectation that I have of the entrepreneurs that I invest in is to be irrationally committed to what they're doing.
Mhm.
Everything else you can work on.
Right.
But if you don't have that grit, that ability to lean into pressure and to outwork everyone and to have that, passion, if you don't have those things, you can't build on it.
Yeah.
You need those are the foundations.
Yeah.
So, but when it's there and you start to have that Vulcan mind meld with these guys, it's a lot of fun. So that's the part that I like the most.
Oh,
And honestly, there's a sharpening of the knife that happens as well. I don't get myself. My primary concern is Symend, and I don't involve myself in anything. It's like the Marco Orbitz effect kind of thing. It's like I don't involve myself in anything that doesn't either have some sort of network effect benefit that flows back to Symend,
hmm
or is sharpening my knife analytically or in some capacity that makes me a better CEO there. And I try to be very, very disciplined about how much of my time I allow those things to take. I used to not be good at that.
Right.
But I've increased that discipline quite a bit because, again, I took a lesson out of our own playbook, which is that you can only put so many hours of high grade analytical horsepower to work a day before you're cognitively impaired and you can't make any more good decisions.
Right.
I can't afford to have it where I take some of those units and allocate them to other things if Symend needs those units, right?
Right.
So I try to be very conscious of how much time I put towards these other things now. And I've dialed it back quite a bit from when, again, learn and iterate. I used to get excited a lot. I still get excited a lot, but I am very, very disciplined about the kinds of things I involve myself in, but also even the ones that check the boxes of sharpening the knife and network effect, even then being like, this is how much budget I have for these things. And if I'm fully utilized on my budget, then something has to come out for another thing to go in. I have to do that.
You have to.
Yeah,
You have to
exactly.
protect your time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hear you. The other thing that I'm really curious to talk to you about is this notion of creating positive human impact in the world. I have an idea that probably goes back to that first story that we talked about right out of the gate. But how do you think about creating impact in the world with Symend and even personally?
Yeah. So I do a bunch of philanthropic things today. Um, I sit on the board of Alberta Children's Hospital Endowment. I sit on the board of Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund. Myself and my family do a lot of charitable giving every year to the less fortunate. Symend does the same. Um, so those are some of the things where I've been involved. When there was this big drive to resettle Afghanis and Syrians, I played a role there. I'm on the Business Council of Canada. There's all these things where I try to give back. I want to do more, but I don't have the resources to do
Mhm.
more. But I see an opportunity to do significantly more over time. One of the greatest things that I've been fortunate enough to benefit from, and I'm sure other ecosystems have this, but from my experience, Calgary has this at a level of abundance I haven't seen in other places, which is our those that have succeeded because of Alberta, because of Calgary, have this incredible patriotism towards this province
Mhm.
that almost supersedes their patriotism to the nation, I would say.
Mhm.
They're Albertan. That's how they identify. That's how they think.
Yeah.
And they are incredibly invested into helping this province and helping the people that are here.
Mhm.
And I was a beneficiary of that when I got here because
Yeah.
a lot of doors opened for me and I was able to parlay that into a pretty great career so far. I'm trying to do my part to give back to the things that I mentioned, and I want to do more. But I think that's probably the place where my loyalties lie the most. And I want to do more if I can. So
Mhm.
that's the place with helping other entrepreneurs like I was,
Yep.
like I was helped, and then trying to reinvest into this nation and this province that's giving me so much. I think those would be the two key areas. And it's funny, like as wealthy as Alberta is, I think per capita we're the wealthiest province in Canada by far. And sadly, over the last decade, I think that a lot of the other parts of the country have moved in the wrong direction. Hopefully, it gets better. But even in Alberta, as wealthy as we are, we had this thing at Symend where we were doing these Christmas. We were buying Christmas packages for families. I think we got up to like 500 families or something.
Wow.
And we would pull out these lists of what they could pick to get into their like little care packages for these underprivileged families in Calgary. And I thought it would be toys and turkeys and things like that. And, we have the highest per capita income of any major city in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
We have the lowest taxes, lowest cost of living,
Mm-hmm.
highest opportunities for employment. And yet, and this isn't Cuba, this is Calgary.
Yeah.
It was toilet paper and bed sheets and aspirin and tampons. And I really broke down when I saw the list. And I was almost a little bit ashamed because I felt like I'd forgotten. I don't need to go that far
Mm-hmm.
to find people that still struggle
Yeah.
in a way that I didn't think would be that pervasive where we are as a nation.
Yeah.
So there's definitely more we can do. And hopefully with time, I'll do more.
You've
That's
already
my
done
plan.
so much. You've already
But
done so much.
but it's crazy though, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is a real wake-up call.
I didn't think that would be
Mm-hmm.
toilet paper and bed sheets and school writing books and pencils were the number one things that families were asking for in Calgary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, I think we have missed the mark as a society if with the amount of wealth if this was happening in Cuba or Brazil, I get it. But for the amount of wealth that we have, the fact that that's still pervasive,
Mm-hmm.
I believe in capitalism. I want to be a billionaire. I believe that that's a good thing. I don't think that's a dirty word. But when you have things like the richest two men in the United States have more money than the bottom 50%, that's a level of extreme. If that exists while at the same time people can't afford bed sheets, there is an equalization that needs to occur that I think we're missing the mark on. And I don't believe in socialism. I don't believe in these things. So I don't know what the right answer is. I just think that, as a society, we should be doing better if there's both people have jobs. One's working in Walmart and another one in McDonald's, and they can't afford toilet paper at home.
Yeah.
I think we've missed the mark if that's the case here.
Yeah. There's work to be done, no
There's
question.
there's work to be done.
And I can see how passionate and emotional you are about that.
It was just a weird.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting it,
Yeah.
honestly.
I do want to point something out, though, Hanif. The work that you're doing with Symend,
Yeah.
that work is life-changing for
For a
that
lot of
end
people.
consumer,
Yeah.
right? Like that person that can't afford to make these payments, you are changing their lives by pointing them toward a better financial outcome.
No, I know. I think that whatever my life looks like on the other side of Cement, because I'm not going to be the CEO of this company forever,
Mm-hmm.
I think a big part of it will be finding a way to give back that is really oriented towards training people to fish versus giving them fish. But nevertheless, like, Canada should, by all rights, given our resources and positioning and educate, by all rights, we should be one of the most prosperous nations in the world. And if we aren't at any point in time, I think the only people we can blame is ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Work to be done.
Yeah.
As we wrap up these conversations, I always ask the same two questions. You are the co-founder of Symend. You're writing the story for your company. How do you hope that story goes?
My biggest North Star is the 250 million customers treated ends up being 1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
If where I hang it up is there's 1 billion people out there who are past due on their bills and we help them, that's a big accomplishment. And along the way, there will be a lot of sacrifices. There will be a lot of unexpected things. But as long as we continue to deliver and compound on that North Star, I think that's the most important thing.
I love it. Love it. And then finally, you are a founder. You're a co-founder of Symend. How do you hope your own personal story goes?
I think recently I had a really big moment in my professional career. I got inducted into the Alberta Business Hall of Fame. I think, again, there's no number, there's no amount of money. I think if when I finish and I hang it up, the things that I helped create persist and continue to deliver value when my kids are grown up and when the community has grown and expanded. And if that's more than just Symend, it's Symend and other things where I've helped or invested or guided, I think that'll be a really great outcome. And then beyond that, while I've done small things in terms of philanthropy, I don't know what that thing is. It will require a lot of my time, but I do want there to be one landmark thing that defines how I end my life from a philanthropic perspective that survives me. Maybe a educational school for the gifted, or if gifted immigrants, or I don't know, something like that. But like, there's got to be something that I can do that survives me on the philanthropy side. I just haven't started thinking about it too much yet.
Early days.
Early days.
Hanif, thank you so much for this conversation.
No problem. Happy to be here. Thank you.
If you're building a tech company in Canada, you've probably heard of Artemis. They're the recruiters founders trust to find the leaders and key teammates who'll shape the future of their business. I know them personally. They're thoughtful, genuinely caring, and deeply connected in tech. The Artemis Canada team treats every search like the future depends on it, because it does. Life sciences, aerospace, agribusiness, tech. The Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund is fueling Calgary's future through smart investment in innovative sectors and world-class talent. It's how we grow a resilient, diversified economy. Explore more at opportunitycalgary.com. API is helping innovators accelerate from idea to impact. Whether it's pharmaceuticals, medical devices and diagnostics, health technologies, or natural health products, API supports the full journey, from early research to clinical and commercial manufacturing. API bridges the gap between academia and industry right here in Canada.